This is the smallest full-frame camera with the most pancakest of pancake lenses ever. Believe me, I had to sit down and find all the dimensions of all the small full-frame lenses and bodies, measure it in millimeters to make sure it's the smallest, and it truly is. But does this ultimate everyday carry setup still deliver quality? Does it work with street photography, and is it deserving of the pocket cinema crown? Well, yes, but with some caveats. After owning the Sigma FP for 3 years now, I've started to appreciate it more as a photography tool. While I originally got it for its internal raw video capabilities, I found myself grabbing it more and more often than my more capable S5 2X for photography. It was initially dismissed by many people for its true hybrid camera. It does have a somewhat limited photo feature. For instance, its fully electronic shutter means sometimes you get bizarre motion artifacts like this shot I took from a moving car. And in certain indoor lighting, you have to set the shutter speed to 1/60 or 1/125 to avoid weird banding. And it almost screwed me when I was taking pictures of this band performing. Also, if you like flash, it's even more crippled with a max sync speed of 1/30 or 1/15 seconds in 14-bit mode. And it has no hot shoe or EVF built in, requiring expensive add-ons. The battery life is pretty mid, the monitor doesn't tilt or pivot, single autofocus is questionable, and continuous autofocus is completely unusable. There's no in-body image stabilization, but why do I like using it so much? Well, this little dense brick of a camera, in my opinion, is the smallest actual cinema camera that doesn't compromise on what actually matters: image quality. Both the stills and the video are stunning in my opinion. And it's a camera I don't have to think twice about when going out for a walk or packing for a trip. For street photography or just an EDC camera, it fulfills the two basic needs I have, being small and compact while still delivering exceptional quality. But the real kicker is with the FP, I can go to a full-blown video rig and bring it to paid or creative video gigs to get that cinema DNG 12-bit raw footage. And now I've finally figured out my favorite way to use it for photography that really embraces the form factor of this camera and makes it actually pocketable.
Full disclosure, Brightin Star provided me with this lens free of charge for testing and a review. However, all the opinions I shared in this video are entirely my own, and Brightin Star hasn't seen this yet.
This lens is incredibly small, but it still has a full manual focus and fully manual aperture ring that opens up to f2.8. I like getting gear like this where it lets you try different techniques. And for this one, it really helped me learn zone focusing, since the 28mm focal length is very forgiving and gives a wider focus range. And the small size means it's much less obtrusive, so I could snap shots that I would not normally take with my other cameras and get a lot closer. While this lens has a lot going for it, there are definitely some compromises that were made to get it this small. For one, the image is quite soft and vignetted on the corners of the full frame picture, and their MTF charts that were published by Brightin Star confirm that as well. Even stopped down to f5.6, corner sharpness is just not amazing. However, the center and mid-frame give surprisingly good sharpness, like this image zoomed to 200%. The other downside, in my opinion, is the pretty high minimum focusing distance of 0.7 meters, which at times has felt limiting. And also this lens flares like crazy, like this picture. Altogether, it's not a technically well-corrected lens, but for my use case of snapping street scenes and people, it's very well suited and it lends itself with lots of character. And paired with the FP, it's almost comically small, like it's basically as small as the disposable 35mm toy cameras that you can get, but it's still capable of making great work. Some alternatives would be the A7C II from Sony with the new Viltrox 28mm autofocus lens, which is more expensive and slightly bigger, but it's also not as bright, but it's a little less finicky than the FP. Also, you could go with the new Lumix S9, but that's also larger and more expensive. I recently took it on a trip to Japan and was able to fit both this and my Olympus Pen F film camera in the same small Peak Design 3-liter sling, and it fit super easily. But my other cameras didn't make the cut.
When I first got this lens, I wasn't expecting to do much with it in terms of videography, since it's clearly designed for Leica M-mount photography-only cameras. But after doing a few tests, I was pleasantly surprised at how capable it was for video work. Let's go over why this little lens punches above its weight for video. Although it's a 28mm lens, shooting at f2.8 can still give you pleasing subject isolation with a nice rounded bokeh effect. Interestingly, the edges of the frame exhibit an unusual triangle or cat's eye effect. In a few shots, I even saw a swirly bokeh type effect. While the center sharpness is impressive for a lens of this size and price, it does exhibit some noticeable barrel distortion. This is most obvious in scenes where you have straight lines near the edge of the frame. So to test it, I took a picture of this brick wall. You can see that there's also significant light fall off in the corners, but that clears up pretty quickly after f4. It has a 6-element design which shows more spot flares here. The lens is very prone to veiling flares, as seen here where the light is coming in at a 70 to 90 degree angle from the side. And I've also had several times where rainbow flares completely washed out the image when I was shooting directly at the sun. A lot of these can be used for creative effects, but sometimes it's something to be aware of when you want an image that has plenty of contrast. It actually takes filters, which is not always the case with these ultra light small pancakes. In fact, you can get a step-up ring from 25.5mm to 37mm and then start attaching ND filters. And the size means you can fit it in places where a larger setup would be impossible to fit. To test its low light performance, I filmed a scene of my editor getting on and starting up his motorcycle at night. Now this isn't a pretty brightly lit parking lot, but still. At f2.8 you have plenty to work with on modern full-frame cameras. One major pro for using this lens in video is that everything is fully mechanical. The focus ring and focus mechanism is completely manual and mechanical, so you can forget the focus-by-wire BS that's in a lot of the modern lenses. And the focus tab is actually quite easy to use. However, the aperture ring is difficult to turn, but since it's still fully manual, you can use dumb adapters and get it adapted to anything with a mirrorless mount. So I don't think that's really a con in my opinion. But really there's one reason why I would use this more for filming, and it's actually the imperfections. I'm pretty fond of vintage lenses for the same reason, which is to avoid the clinical sharpness you find in a lot of modern lenses. And this one seems to embody the best of both worlds in the sense that it still retains sharpness in center frame while having unique characteristics that give it a softer image. With that, you might be surprised how I plan to use this setup moving forward. And it's not going to only be an everyday carry lens. I decided to test it against my current wide-angle lens, the 17-40 Canon EF, to see how it would compare to this one. And here's a shot-by-shot comparison. So camera A was the 17-40 EF on the Lumix S5 IIX recording 422 10-bit, and camera B was the Brightin Star 28mm on the Sigma FP recording Cinema DNG RAW files. Both cameras were set to f4 ISO 1600 and have a basic color correction in DaVinci Resolve. And to be honest, I think I prefer the video coming from the Brightin Star. Both lenses are pretty much matched sharpness in center frame at least, but I think the Brightin Star has a bit nicer of a color rendition in the skin tones. I don't think I'll ever be recording YouTube videos in Cinema DNG RAW because I tried that, and I have a mountain full of hard drives still from last year because the file sizes are just crazy. But I do think this will be my talking head lens on the S5 IIX. I like the character of it, and it's light enough that it lets me mount the camera and the lens on a magic arm behind my monitor. So this setup clearly isn't for everyone. If you're looking for a fast autofocus, professional ergonomics, or perfect optical performance, you'll probably be better getting something else. But if you're looking for a lightweight, compact, full-frame setup that delivers really good image quality and has unique rendering, encourages you to shoot different, I think this combo is a pretty good one to look at. And especially if you're looking for something as an everyday carry. And if you're interested in seeing how I rigged out my Sigma FP as a full-blown cinema rig, check out this video.